3 days before the Hamilton Corporation's most critical shareholders meeting in decades, Chelsea vanished without a trace. No calls, no signs of struggle, just silence. The timing was surgical. Everyone was on edge, already unraveling under the weight of boardroom battles and whispered betrayals. The stakes were sky high. The absence of a senior executive like Chelsea, so close to the vote, triggered a storm. But no one expected what came next. Naomi Hamilton received a video message on her secure Linino signature, no metadata. Just a cold, grainy clip. Chelsea was bound to a chair, bruised, her eyes wide with terror. The setting was unmistakable, a warehouse, dim, industrial, forgotten. A distorted voice issued the demand. Step down as CEO. Announce your resignation within 48 hours. Or she dies. There was no bluff in the voice. No room for negotiation. The message cut out. Naomi froze. Her mind raced, fury clashing with fear. She couldn't call the publicity attempt to involve law enforcement might provoke a fatal response. Internally, the Hamilton executive team was already unstable. Rumors had been circling for weeks, mostly around Haley. Some believed she had orchestrated the media leaks, the boardroom smear campaigns, and the tanking of investor confidence. With Chelsea now missing, suspicion only deepened. Naomi said nothing about the video, not yet. But she moved fast. She locked her inner circle, isolated sensitive communications, and began sweeping the internal servers for any breach. Martin was the one she called in next. Not an executive, not family, not officially part of Hamilton Corporation anymore. But he was loyal, discreet, and most importantly, brilliant. Martin didn't ask questions. He simply accessed Naomi's device, ran frame-by-frame analysis on the video, isolated GPS drift data from the audio bleed, and pulled a tiny metadata fragment left behind by a rushed file conversion. What he found changed everything. The warehouse location wasn't an abandoned structure in some foreign territory. It was just outside the city limits of Hamilton's former logistics depots, decommissioned 6 years ago and never released. Martin didn't stop there. He checked the building's access history, power usage, thermal scans. One name surfaced over and over again: Dani. Recently released from prison, disgraced after a corporate scandal, she had vanished from the public radar. No interviews, no statements, no social presence. She had gone underground. Now she had resurfaced it for redemption, but for revenge. Dani was the one holding Chelsea. Dani, once Naomi's fiercest rival and now her most dangerous ghost, had staged the entire kidnapping with surgical precision. Not for ransom, not for leverage, for reinstatement. Dani wanted back in. She wanted her seat at the table, and she was willing to break every rule, destroy every alliance, to force Naomi out. While internal factions in the company began accusing Haley louder, more publicly Naomi stayed silent. She couldn't risk alerting Dani or tipping her hand. Haley herself, though consumed with her own power play, seemed genuinely confused by the developments. She'd planned a coup, yes, but not this. Her moves had been cold, calculated, but not violent. As her name got dragged into the firestorm, Haley began losing control of her own campaign. The board grew restless. Investors pulled back. Media started circling, hungry for answers. Naomi pretended to bend under pressure, all while Martin moved. He hacked building security logs, pulled access footage from blacked out cams, matched timestamps. He tracked Dani's burner devices, masked under multiple proxies, but not good enough to fool him. On the night of the second dayless, then 24 hours before the shareholders' vote, Martin traced Dani to a nearby safe house. It was minimal, shielded, with just one vehicle leaving sporadically. Naomi, against every warning, decided to go. No police, no legal teams, no security detail. She needed Chelsea safe. She needed this handled off the grid. With Martin feeding her real-time updates, Naomi approached the warehouse at dawn. The place was a fortress of rust and shadows. She slipped inside, her heart a drum of ice, her mind steel. Chelsea was very alive, gagged, her eyes locking on Naomi in shock. But Dani stepped out of the darkness, calm, composed, holding a gun like it was just another tool in her arsenal. Her demands were simple. Naomi resigns. Publicly. Immediately. And in return, Chelsea walks out unharmed. If Naomi hesitated, Chelsea dies. There was no emotion in Dani's tone. Just calculation. She spoke of betrayal, of how she'd been thrown out, how the board had turned its back on her. She spoke of redemption through chaos, of taking back what was stolen. Naomi didn't flinch. She knew stalling wouldn't work. Dani was too far gone. So she did the only thing left to offer Dani a deal. Not a fake one. A real one. She'd call an emergency press conference. Step aside. Offer Dani a consulting seat. Not permanent. Temporary. Contingent on performance. It would give Dani a path back and she could use to rebuild or destroy herself with. Naomi banked on one thing, Dani's ego. The need to be seen winning. Dani hesitated. For the first time, the doubt cracked through her armor. Martin, listening through the comms, activated a remote lockdown of the building. Backup was inbound. Naomi saw the distraction. She lunged. The gun went off. The bullet missed. Chaos erupted. Martin crashed through the rear entrance with a private security team seconds later. Dani was subdued. Chelsea was pulled out. The nightmare was over? Barely. But the fallout had only just begun. Naomi kept her position. The board, shocked by the revelation, circled tighter around her. Haley's credibility suffered irreparably. She had orchestrated lies, yes, but she hadn't kidnapped anyone. Dani was returned to custody, her attempt at resurrection crushed under the weight of her own madness. The shareholders' meeting proceeded with an empty chair left in Chelsea's place as a reminder of how close the company came to collapse. Naomi stood before the audience. No notes, no screen, just the truth. She recounted what had happened. Not in full, just enough. Enough to restore confidence. Enough to assert strength. Enough to draw a line. Haley sat in the second row, silent. Martin disappeared again, his role unacknowledged. And Dani? Her name was scrubbed from every file, every history, every mention banished not by law, but by legacy. Hamilton Corporation survived, but it would never be the same. And somewhere behind some other wall, another shadow might already be watching. But even as Naomi Hamilton delivered her poised address to the shareholders, composed, undefeated, she knew the storm hadn't truly passed. The surface had calmed, yes. The board applauded. Investors exhaled. The press backed off. But beneath it all, fractures ran deep. Chelsea was alive, but rattled. Her captivity had left more than bruises. It had cracked something in her spirit. She returned to the office 2 days later, not with a triumphant stride, but with the quiet resolve of someone who'd seen death blink first. She said little. She answered no media. And while she remained officially in her role, everyone could feel the distance. Chelsea was present, but detached, haunted. Naomi noticed. She didn't press. She simply waited. Meanwhile, Haley's Empress-o meticulously constructed begun to erode. Her supporters on the board were now lukewarm, unsure whether aligning with her meant bold innovation or reputational suicide. Dani's failed coup had cast a long shadow over everyone even remotely associated with corporate aggression, and Haley, whether fairly or not, wore part of that blame. Documents Martin recovered suggested that Dani's knowledge of internal structures, outed access codes, committee member vulnerability should come from prison records. Someone had fed her. Someone inside. And while the investigation was technically closed, Martin never stopped digging. What he found next threatened to reopen the entire wound. Encrypted messages, time-stamped voice memos, internal scheduling leaks. The source, Graham Locke, Haley's former strategist and discreet consigliere, thought to be long gone after a quiet severance 6 months earlier. But Graham hadn't disappeared. He had been playing both sides, feeding Dani intel under a pseudonym, operating through dummy shell networks funded by crypto. His goal wasn't just revenge. It was disruption. Graham, ousted for behavior inconsistent with corporate ethics, had watched Hamilton from the outside with growing resentment. Helping Dani was just the opening move. His real agenda was still in motion. Martin brought the evidence to Naomi first. She reviewed it all in silence. Her jaw tightened. The implications were staggering, not just for Haley, but for the corporation. If proof leaked that someone tied to Hamilton leadership had been involved in corporate terrorism, indirect livestock wouldn't just dip. It would crash. So Naomi made a decision. She confronted Haley directly and alone. Not in front of the board. Not in a press-ready spectacle. She brought her into the old executive suite, locked the door, and laid everything out. The messages, the voice signatures, Graham's trail. Haley didn't deny the connection. In fact, she didn't react at all for a long, cold moment. Then she simply said, "He went too far." I didn't ask for this, but Naomi wasn't interested in denial or apology. She gave Haley 2 options: quietly relinquish her board seat and dissolve her internal holdings, or the evidence would be turned over to the federal authorities. Haley stared at her for a long time, then smiled. Not from amusement, from recognition. "You've learned," she said. And then she walked out. By the end of the week, Haley's resignation was filed, her shares frozen in a pending trust, and her departure spun as a sabbatical for personal growth. The board accepted it gratefully. The media didn't probe too deeply. The family said nothing. But Naomi understood Haley wasn't done. She was just regrouping. With Haley gone, Chelsea began to re-engage. Slowly. She took up smaller initiatives, reconnected with the HR and sustainability arms of the company, and began forming a new executive alliance built less on old guard allegiances and more on a shared vision for stability. She hadn't forgiven Naomi for the delay in her rescue. She didn't say it, but Naomi could feel it. The tension remained unspoken but sharp. And then came the message. Delivered to Naomi's private line, again anonymous, again untraceable. No video this time. Just text: "You stopped Dani. You buried Haley. But you missed one." Graham was only step 1. Step 2 is already underway. There was no other content. No sender. No demands. Just a warning. Martin read it over twice, then ran every trace he knew. Nothing. No metadata. No IP fingerprint. Whoever sent it wasn't Graham. Wasn't Haley. Wasn't Dani. It was someone else entirely. Naomi stared at the message long after Martin had shut down the screen. The boardroom was silent. The city beyond the glass walls moved like it always had, indifferent, unstoppable. Her hands curled into fists, because now she knew the game wasn't over. It had just leveled up, and the next move would be war.